Hello and welcome to interest.co.nz. I'm Janae Tibshirani and today I'm joined by the founder of the money transfer operator, KlickEx, Rob Bell. Thank you for joining us, Rob.
You're welcome. Nice to be here. Thank you.
KlickEx is one of a raft of money remitters around the world that's had its bank accounts closed due to money laundering risks. The issue is that if remitters gather funds from a number of people in New Zealand, put these in a bank account and then transfer the funds to recipients overseas, the bank doesn't necessarily know exactly where the money is coming from and who it's being sent to. They could therefore be breaching international anti-money laundering standards. To steer clear of this risk, banks have largely moved to shut the accounts of their remittance clients. The problem is a number of migrants in New Zealand rely on remitters to transfer money to their homelands, paying much lower fees than what banks charge. While the Reserve Bank has spoken out against banks' blanket de-risking, a High Court judge earlier this year backed Kiwibank as it closed the accounts of one of its remaining remittance clients, eTrans International. So it's since closed the accounts of KlickEx. Rob, what do you do if a bank doesn't want to do business with you?
Well, it's quite hard. The banking system already has certain economies of scale. So they've got technology deployments that are really helpful in keeping costs ultra low. So in the domestic market in particular, those costs are very, very low. It's generally free to send money between bank accounts. We rely on that because of the highly banked population here in New Zealand. It's very easy to just go online and send money through to our clearing account. Once we have that, then electronically it's quite easy to send that overseas. If you're using the bank to send money overseas, it's quite hard. It's quite a manual process for the banks generally. And now the banks are imposing that on us here domestically because they're kicking us out of their efficient local clearing system and making us replicate something more like the international system here domestically. So it's a bit hard. We run a giant cash clearing system at the moment. It's effectively what the banks do in the background anyway. So we can collect money from any of about 80 locations throughout New Zealand. Collect that up, count it, make sure it's real. We used to use the bank accounts to say our agents have deposited the right amount of money. Now we just extend our system, our compliance controls, and replace the banks.
Okay, so you go to your shops that collect the cash, you take that money, and then what do you physically do with that money?
Well, there's a couple of options. Bearing in mind what we are, which is we run a giant netting system. Netting's where a bank or an operator or a financial institution will balance payments coming and going from certain places. So what we try and do is balance the number of payments coming into New Zealand as the ones going out. So generally when someone sends money to Tonga or Samoa, we have someone on the other side wanting to bring money out. So you have lots of people sending money home for food, then you have lots of the purchasers of food or the importers there needing to pay for that food back in New Zealand. So we just manually manage that.
I mean, how do you balance those things out? That seems rather
technical.
Difficult, yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. And with the bank account facilities, it's really easy. The banks take that, they hold the funds for us, they protect it, and sometimes, though not recently, they would pay us interest on that as well. But now what we're doing is, our system's pretty much instantaneous anyway, and we've got amazing transparency throughout our system. So although it's really painful and intellectually, academically, really frustrating to not have a bank account, to not be working with the banks to solve these kind of money laundering transparency concerns, it's not actually that much harder, although it's just kind of ridiculous the lengths we're going to. When we had banks, we could actually go to the banks and offset that ourselves and just purchase from the wholesale market. But as the banks are shutting out our access to, first of all, the wholesale market, we then approach their commercial clients and say, hey, do you want free FX?
Okay, so who are your commercial clients?
Every business you can imagine, just regular businesses. The people doing the real stuff, supermarkets, importers, just normal, everyday, very low risk people.
Okay, and look, when last were you audited by the Department of Internal Affairs?
The department doesn't actually do the audits, so we have to have an external audit.
Right.
And the requirement is to do that once every, I think, 2 years. Ours in practice have been about once every 3 months, as banks are doing quarterly reviews of everything. So we're always preparing the documents and having them done and sending them to the banks to have a look at, or external people. So it's basically a continuous.
So so when did you start using this new scheme?
Well, we first deployed it really in Tonga in 2007. So it was a very manual service back then and required a lot of human intervention. We we're under negotiations with Kiwi Bank since more than a year ago that they wanted to shut our accounts, and they had a program to step back down to zero money remitters on their system. So we came to the end of a warning cycle, and they shut our accounts a little bit abruptly. So we had to sort of force deploy it in April.
Yeah.
Lasted a week. We were shifting millions of dollars of cash around, which is completely ridiculous. But
all
then
through this balancing technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not super hard.
Yeah.
It's it gives us confidence that our staff who are running the system are learning really how banking works. There's not a lot of people that know how to balance a branch book. I mean, it's all done with the computers now. So if the computers go down, the banks are a bit stuffed. But now we're doing liquidity management on a branch-by-branch basis. Our collateral management system is probably more advanced than the reserve banks. So it's exciting.
Right, okay. So since you've deployed this sort of across your entire business, have you been audited?
No, not yet. It's only relatively new. So
okay. Look, something else which you've mentioned is something that you're looking at using is using what you've described as high-speed patrol boats, which are ex-NATO military vessels, and oil tankers to actually shift the money.
Physical bit, yeah.
Could you just explain to us what you mean by that?
Well, when the banking system breaks down, you have to go back to first principles. So banking is all about managing value and shifting value electronically and securely. So if you don't have access to that giant efficient system, you have to replicate it. You have to build it in a new sense. So rolling back to the 1400s, which most modern bankers would be familiar with how that works. We haven't moved that far as an industry. You have to then, if you can't use a monetary exchange or an arrangement with a bank, you've got to go to physical shipping. So we're one of the options that we have in New Zealand. Instead of an agent being able to put or a customer being able to put money directly into a bank and shift it to us, they actually have to go to the bank, get the cash out, bring the cash to us, and we then can't put the cash back into the banking system to access the international network, which is run roughly by SWIFT. So we can't send the money overseas. So we need to be able to move collateral. So if we have a surplus of, say, New Zealand dollars, we need to be able to get some sort of collateral up to, say, Tonga to do payouts. And that might mean shifting pellets of cash, which is crazy.
Right, so that's taking suitcases of money and physically moving it between countries.
Or more than that, right? So it could be more bigger than suitcases, right? So
I mean, the logistics of that sound a bit far-fetched.
It does happen. So the banks will have that between their branches here in New Zealand. You have companies like Armaguard or Amalgamated Cash Services just shipping trucks of cash around. You see it on videos, on movies. People always want to rob the armoured vehicles. So we have the same sort of problem now, but internationally, because we're being shut out, like the whole industry, it's not just us, is being shut out of the domestic system, which links to the international system. We can't get access to the international system, so we have to replicate it. And
okay, so I mean, logistics of that. How serious are you about using these boats?
It will become a necessity.
Yeah.
And at least we need options, because we can't be seen or known to put large amounts of value transit onto New Zealand flights or Virgin flights. You have to have options. Right.
So these will be, what sort of boats are you looking at using at the moment?
These particular ones are 130-something foot, high-speed vessels. And, we need a couple of them, because you can't have one, because everyone will know that might be the one that has cash on it. You have to run decoys. But the thing is, this sounds a little crazy, but we used to spend more money on our cybersecurity than it would cost to run a big diesel engine like that. So it's not actually a big cost increase.
I mean, how much money do you transfer already? Because to me it seems like the cost of, you're saying, cybersecurity, it does cost a lot, but still the cost of, having all that approved by the regulators, having the security on board, paying for the boat, the hire, the captain, the fuel, all that stuff, all the security that might go with it so that it doesn't get hijacked along the way. How much is that? Is that really a viable option, given the amount of money being transferred and what you'd be making with fees?
Yeah, this is probably what a lot of people don't understand, is just the scale of the fees in the absence of our service. So it's something like $100 million a year of fees just from the Pacific. So Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, a little bit Vanuatu, they're paying $100 million a year before we entered. So we've come in and we've dropped the price from, imagine 22% was the cost of sending $200, which is a fairly large but typical amount, up to the island. So it's 22% is getting missing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of incentive for someone to get in there and do anything to save that from a retail point of view. We tried to put in a big advanced electronic clearing system so that nobody's tempted to go to do crazy things like, hey, my cousin's just shipping some stuff up to some country, would you just put some money in a suitcase? Right? We think that's bizarre. You could have a clearing system that can do that. So we're going back to that, but we're trying to formalise that older service. And bearing in mind the Hawala systems, which have been running in the Middle East and India for 2,000-3,000 years, they were done by phone calls and trust networks. So we're just doing that again, but we're taking out any chance that the banking system had to be a part of it.
Okay, so how much funds does ClickEx sort of transfer every year?
Our peak here from the Pacific through all transactions, so going double-sided, everything was about $400 million.
Okay, so what portion of that would you expect might be?
I can't tell you what's going to be sitting on ships. That's too dangerous.
Okay, so but a large portion or a small portion?
Well, we've been shut out of the system, so everything that we don't net has to move eventually, or wait for, we have synthetic liquidity systems that can bridge those shortfalls and net flows backwards and forwards, but because of our network, we are able to net a lot of this. So it's a very small percentage of the total daily movement would need to be exposed to this. And we've had a huge amount of support for the businesses in the islands. Whereas if you go back 5 years before we were really operating, it was a 22% cost to get money in and a 5 to 7% to get money out. So they want to protect our kind of system as well. So they're really helping us. Which probably leads to your next question.
Well, no, I'm just wondering what the regulators think about this idea, because it's no doubt risky. And I mean, how many people does ClickEx employ? Would you need to employ more people? It seems like a really quite a major undertaking.
Depends how much bigger we get, but we still have a lot of things automated. So all we're really supervising is, are the systems being used properly, and are they being, there's no sort of bypassing of the systems, which it's kind of easy to do sometimes. You say, look, I'll just do this or that. So we're really a supervisory network, so it doesn't really increase the risk by that much.
Okay, Rob, look, well, interesting stuff. I mean, it really just, what this really does highlight to me is how this anti-money laundering standards come in throughout the world and affects a sector. And I guess this just shows the sorts of,
perverse effects, maybe.
Yeah, the ways that a sector needs
consequences.
Exactly, and the way you need to respond to it. So it's interesting stuff, and we look forward to sort of watching the space to see what you do in the future.
It's really exciting. I feel for the regulators, some of them, they want a solution. Like, everybody knows that what we're doing is not the solution. It's to express or convey understanding of what the actual intent of the anti-money laundering legislation was, ideally to the banks, but I don't pick on them. It's just they're the gatekeepers to the domestic clearing system. So if you can provide access to that system in a safe way, which has been so far entrusted to clearing banks, then the risk would remarkably drop. But it's because there's this ambiguity. You're forcing peripheral people like us, which thank God it's us because we love what we do and we're really good at it, out to go into these really archaic systems. So we're stepping back in process, but applying wonderful technology to it. And the regulators are looking at us going, you're buying ships. This is crazy. But solve the problem. It is better to do this than it is to see the prices go up.